I think some of our listeners want to hear sometimes, they have times when they fail at things. And in leadership, how do you grow from that? Can you share a time when you experienced failure and what it looked like and to help inspire them through that?
I'm going to be 100% honest with you. My failures are stacked up right next to my successes. And so I think to me, the failures were the things that helped me grow through things. And sometimes you think, okay, well, that failure was unfair. I got a raw deal out of that. Maybe I did, maybe I didn't. But you keep moving forward.
Welcome to the Long Blue Leadership Podcast, presented by the United States Air Force Academy Association of Graduates and Air Force Academy Foundation. These are powerful stories shared with candor by Academy graduates, all leaders of character who live them. This is how the Academy experience has shaped their pasts, present, and future. We present these stories to help develop you along your leadership journey. Your host for this edition of Long Blue Leadership is Lieutenant Colonel Retired Navir Walkowitz, USAFA Class of 99 and currently serving as Association of Graduates Senior Vice President of Engagement. And now, Navir Walkowitz.
My guest today is the Assistant Secretary of the Air Force for Energy, Installations, and Environment, the Honorable Dr. Ravi Chaudhary, USAFA Class of 93. Against the backdrop of great power competition, Dr. Chaudhary leads the modernization and reoptimization of the Air Force to ruggedize our installations across the globe against what he describes as kinetic threats, as well as non-kinetic cyber, economic, and extreme weather threats. He has served as Acting Deputy Assistant Secretary of the Navy for Energy, the Director of Advanced Programs and Innovation, Office of Commercial Space Transportation at the Federal Aviation Administration, and he has led in the commercial space industry, research and development in the support of the Department of Transportation and the White House National Space Council. We'll talk with Dr. Chaudhary about his life before, during, and after the Academy. We'll discuss his role modernizing and reoptimizing initiatives and strategies for the Air Force. We'll touch on leading through new and changing threats and making decisions with climate in mind. And we'll discuss Dr. Chaudhary's work with the Secretary of the Air Force and leadership at the base, command, and warfighter levels. Finally, we'll ask Dr. Chaudhary to share advice for developing and advanced leaders. Dr. Chaudhary, welcome to Long Blue Leadership. We're so glad to have you.
Navir, thank you so much. Thank you for that way too kind of an introduction. And I only have one regret. On this weekend, did you have to mention that I was in the Navy for a little while? You just about blew me away. I know you've got some white clear liquid here. I'm just about ready to find out what the clear liquid is.
Cheers
All
to
right,
that, then.
Cheers. Off we go.
Right.
We'll let our audience speculate, and depending on how it goes, we'll critique ourselves. So
I like
just
it.
An honor to be here, and congrats to you on your career of service in the Air Force.
Thank you so much for that.
Yeah.
This is truly a pleasure. And I think what we love about Long Blue Leadership is it's really about our listeners getting to know you.
Yeah.
And we have so many different listeners that are really excited. So let's start with the hat. I've noticed you've got a hat on right here.
Yeah.
Air Force Installations, best in the world. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, let's talk about that because we do have the best installations in the world. Our installations are power projection platforms. Every Air Force installation has a mission that begins and terminates with it. If you go all the way back in our history, General Hap Arnold had this to say about our installations. Air bases are the determining factor in air operations. Think about that. Think about why we need to make sure that our installations are ready to go and why we invest in them as an Air Force. It's because you can't get the jets out of town unless they have a good runway that works, unless they are hardened and ready to absorb the types of blows that have come to us in the past. And I'm telling you right now that we've got to be ready for this future. In a decade of consequence and great power competition, we've got to focus on ruggedizing and ensuring that our installations are as survivable as they ever have been.
Absolutely. Well, I can say that is certainly true. Having been at bases where we've seen some challenges, it does halt and sometimes stop operations. So
yeah, you're right.
Yeah. So it's incredible the work you're doing. And we're going to talk about that today. But before we get there, can we rewind the clock a little bit?
Please don't rewind it too far, but I have a feeling you will.
Just a little bit.
All
just enough to kind of get to know who Ravi was as a young boy. What were you like growing up? Tell us about your family and where you grew up.
Now that's cool. So I was born and raised in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I grew up there all my life. My parents came from India in the 1960s, and they always dreamed to do the unusual. It was the American dream that brought them to this country, and they had kids. And growing up as a South Asian American, people in your community would be like, "Hey, why are you going to join the military? Why are you going to why don't you just be a doctor or engineer or a lawyer or something like that?" Kind of fit the stereotype. But I always thought about it this way. If my parents would give up everything they wanted in their life, their language, their culture, everything to pursue their dreams, wouldn't they want that for their children as well? And so off I went to the Air Force Academy. And the values that my parents instilled in me rang true just about every single day. In fact, when I grow up, my mom would always tell me this. She'd say, if you do your full duty, the rest will take care of itself.
That sounds very familiar to me.
and she would say in the Sanskrit word for that, and my faith tradition is Hinduism, the Sanskrit word for that is dharma. If you follow your dharma, everything will take care of itself. And lo and behold, I'm getting choked up a little bit because when I showed up and opened that contrails and saw that quote, I knew that mom and dad had prepared me. Had prepared me for the challenges that would come. Not just the academy, but everything from 9/11 to deploying to Iraq to raising a family and making sure they have everything they need to prosper. So all that brought me to an institution that honestly brought out the flavor and gave me the same opportunity that this country gave my father. So it's just been a pinch me career, and it's just an honor to be here with you today and with the entire AOG team talking about this.
That's amazing. I mean, I'm thinking about what you just said, that your parents came and they pursued a dream. Yeah. What was that like in your household? What did that look like?
Here's what it looked like. My dad, he actually came to this country with about $165, 80 of which went to his tuition. He was at the University of Missouri, and then he eventually went to the University of Minnesota. The rest he used to get a house and fill the fridge and get my mom. And so when he was looking for an opportunity to serve, he wanted to be in the U.S. Department of Agriculture and serve as a Fed. And so he didn't get that chance. So what he did, he literally put me and my brother and my mom in a car and drove to Washington. When he drove to Washington, he dropped us off at the Lincoln Memorial and walked up the stairs of the Capitol. Two senators from Minnesota, one was walking out, Senator Walter Mondale. He said hello to him. He didn't know him from Adam. And then he went to the office of Hubert Humphrey, and he sat down with him, and he told his story to Hubert Humphrey. And Hubert Humphrey said, "This is what America is all about." And he was kind enough to give my dad a shot in Minneapolis. And he spent his entire career, 25 years, as a federal inspector in the U.S. Department of Agriculture.
My goodness.
It's an incredible story, but you know what? It all came together about a year and a half ago when I was confirmed. And during my swearing in, it was an honor to have Secretary Kendall swear me in, but to have my dad walk up the front steps of the Pentagon with my mom. And we go up the stairs, and I said, "Dad, would you turn around for a second?" And he turned around, and I said, "You can see the Lincoln Memorial, and you can see the Capitol." And I said, "Look what you've done in one generation." That is the embodiment of the American dream. And as he was kind of, I'm getting choked up. He wiped the tears from his eyes. He realized that what this country has given to us is something that we've got to always think about giving back and giving back. And that's really what my career has always been about, giving back to the country that has given my family everything.
That is an amazing. Wow. Just hearing, I mean, I literally am almost without words because I can see what your dad has instilled in you, made possible, but instilled in you as a servant leader as well. That's pretty impressive. So tell me about your mom, because it sounds like she also instilled some pretty incredible traits in you and some beliefs in how to treat people and do, what did that look like in her leadership in your life?
It's just, what can I say about my mom? She's a pillar of the community back in Minneapolis. She runs a nonprofit called Seva. In Hindi, Seva means service, to serve.
Wow.
To serve your fellow citizens, to serve your nation. And again, I told you about her enduring quote: "If you do your full duty, the rest will take care of itself." So in that nonprofit, she is actually bringing cultural specific services, health services to the Asian American community. But one thing she did was during COVID was incredible. She pulled together a meal team and she served somewhere around 20,000 seniors.
Oh my goodness.
And it wasn't just Asian Americans, anybody in the Minneapolis community that was struggling, that couldn't get food, that was having a tough time. And then as you know, after the George Floyd tragedy occurred, the city went through a tough time, and there was an area right around one of the police stations where the riots were going on, and everybody's fleeing. When the community was fleeing, she was mobilizing her team to go in.
Wow.
They were going in and they were rescuing people from shelters to get them to a safe place. And 2 days later, she brought a team into the community that was still smoldering and set up meal stations to just give people sandwiches, bread, whatever, to just make everybody feel good and move forward. And that's what America is about.
Right.
Sometimes we get so wrapped up in the times and differences, but we realize that America is more than just Washington. America is about neighbors and neighbors caring for each other.
Communities.
So, and where did I learn that? I learned that from my mom, but the Air Force Academy brought it out, and I applied that every single day, whether it was a mission, launching GPSs, doing engineering, tough engineering problems, or flying missions into the CENTCOM AOR, where we had to bring crews to bear to execute incredible missions. And so reflecting on that, boy, you're really tearing me up today.
No, not at all. But
because you're bringing this all out of my heart, and it's just an honor to be here and humbling to tell the story. But I know that there are thousands and thousands of grads out there that have just as inspiring stories, and that's why I love to come to AOG. That's why I like to spend time with our cadets today, which was just as incredible. I went down to Jacks Valley and got to see the assault course as well. Luckily, I didn't have too many flashbacks.
Did you have your rubber ducky with you?
Yeah,
Okay.
I did not have a rubber ducky.
Okay.
They did push me through it, but the demo was incredible. And I know our secretary was equally impressed with the cadets and the caliber of students that are here, the caliber of our cadets, and how I'm so optimistic for the future of our Air Force.
Well, and
Space Force.
Absolutely. And I can share, based off of what you shared about your mom and dad, there's no reason why you're able to take on a job that almost seems impossible with the scope and breadth of what you're responsible for. So I can't wait to get into that as well. Can we go to when you're at the academy? I want to know more about you as a cadet, because as interesting as you are as an adult, what were you like as a cadet?
There's a lot that I really shouldn't disclose, okay? So we've got to be really, really careful around it. So me and my classmates, we have this thing called mutually assured destruction. You know stories about me, I know stories about you, so let's just leave it there. But let me tell you, the academy was just the honor of a lifetime. But you know what? Going through it with your classmates is something. I was just having lunch with our cadets today. I was a grad of Delta Tau Deuce, and to spend time with them and tell them stories and hear about their stories about what Deuce is like these days was absolutely I was just blown away with it. I was primarily in Deuce. I had the just pleasure of being a squadron commander and having peers that really, really care for each other, peers that I keep in touch with to this very day. I have them up on text.
Wow.
And we share with each other. We have challenges. We go through it together. But I will tell you one story about why your cadet story matters. And you don't realize it until the balloon goes up. When I graduated from pilot training, I graduated essentially the day after 9/11. And I was actually in the planning room when 9/11 happened. And within a few weeks, I did my check ride that day. Within a few weeks, I was at Eielson Air Force Base. And my squadron commander, when I showed up, had me look out the window and said, we don't have time to mission qual you. We don't have enough pilots. We're going to marry you up with a crew to go downrange. And you know what he did? He married me up with two people. One who was my classmate from the class of 1993.
Really?
Two was a member of my squadron from Deuce.
Wow.
And he was a new aircraft commander. We had an experienced first pilot, and I didn't know nothing from nothing. I was a brand new co-pilot. And so getting ready for those missions, a new environment for me required something that our squadron commander knew, that if I put 3 academy graduates together, the bond that they've had in their years was going to carry them through the toughest conditions, in unknown conditions. And sure enough, we clicked and did well. But to anybody who's a current cadet and listening in and wondering, hey, is this bonding? Is this stuff? Is what's going on now? The time that we have together here in the academy going to amount to anything? I'm here to tell you it does. And through my own life experiences, and quite honestly, in a number of missions we fly, working it together as a team, the bonds we create as cadets carry over for decades.
So maybe you can share some of those bonding moments at the academy in the form of, when you said you were a squadron commander, what were some of the lessons you learned from a leadership aspect in leading your peers, but also while still trying to bond with them?
Yeah, to me, when you look back, sometimes you're separated by age and rank, right? You got age and you got rank, and your peer groups kind of set you that way. At the academy, it's completely different because your peers, as a senior, you're all peers and colleagues. And to take on a leadership role is what I would say is the toughest challenge of all. To lead a team of peers and colleagues can't be challenging. And there's challenges that really kind of come with everything like that. But to me, you can't do it without collaboration, without consulting folks, and being inclusive in how you give people a voice. Now, the jury is out. I'm not going to judge whether I was successful or not. Probably not, but I will say we did one thing. We were the athletic squadron of the year.
Okay.
We were beasts. In fact, we decided that we were going to go for one thing. It was going to be that we were going to be the athletic squadron. And so we did. We kicked some
impressive.
Serious butt. And so back in the day, you do what was called a sweep. So if you swept all your sports and intramurals that day, the next day you would get Mitch's Mountains. And
Good
so
old Mitch's Mountains.
The lore of the Mitch's Mountains was incredible. And today, interestingly enough, we had what I would call Mitch's Mountain version 2.0. Probably half the calories and twice the caffeine. I don't know what it is, but I actually whipped out a picture of an old Mitch's Mountain, and I showed them. They're like, it was really funny because to see the look on their eyes and to see the original Mitch's Mountain, it was like, they looked at it and they're like, that's what a Mitch's, and they're like, there's an Oreo cookie on top.
It was
there's
wonderful.
Whipped cream. And I'm like, for us, I'm like, okay, this is a nice 2.0 and everything. But back in the
you got to
day,
go back to. So how many of those did you get then? If you were actually the athletic squadron, you must have swept multiple days.
Can't you see the love handles on me right now? Yes, that was the one challenge because, you got to stay in shape. But we kicked some serious butt. We would sweep all the time. I was actually on the water polo team.
We share that, except
really?
I did not enjoy it. It sounds like you might have.
Nice.
Okay.
I don't know. So I'm a decent swimmer. I'm pretty good. Grew up in Minnesota, tons of lakes. I can say I'm a decent swimmer. But I can tell you I am not a water polo player.
Same.
So what they used me for in water polo.
Were you the buoy?
I was the person. I was the anti-buoy, because whoever was the good player, they'd say, go and put your arms over that one and get them underwater so that our fellow water polo teammate could go in and score. And so probably one of my most beloved plaques in my life is my water polo plaque, because we were wing champs.
Oh my goodness.
We ran the tables, we were wing champs, and that plaque still sits on my desk. It's one of my most beloved things. My wife, Uma, she was getting ready to toss it. I'm like, no, not that.
The water polo plaque.
She's like, oh, what about this graduation plaque from the academy? You can get rid of that, but don't get rid of my water polo plaque. That is beloved. So anyways, I was asking our cadets today, I say, what's Deuce like? I'm like, so are you guys a training squadron?
Yes, what are they like?
They're like, we're the standard squadron. And I'm like, wow, that's impressive. I'm like, what about Mach 1? Are they the training squadron? They're like, Mach 1, nah, not really.
That's so different.
Yeah, they're like, we're number one in Sammys. We're number one in this. I'm like, oh, wow, they still have Sammys and stuff like that. Yeah, have fun. That was a haze for me. Triple threats were always a haze for me.
Yes.
So I never liked that.
I'm not sure if maybe the Deuce team does now, but yes.
Well, I know Mach 1. They loved it. I got friends from Mach 1. They're going to kill me for this. But yeah, they loved it. They're all into it, cleaning their rooms. And Deuce would be on the corner going, would Mach 1 please go to bed? So anyway, sorry.
I love these stories. So were you this happy as a cadet?
No, I was not a happy cadet. I was a surviving kid. I was trying to get through the next day, and honestly, to me, it was always a wonder to be there, and I was always grateful for being there to serve. I was in a tough major, aero major, and honestly, it didn't come right away to me, and so I was not one of those sterling cadets that just rocks the house and everything. I was on the comm list for a good portion of the time, but the academics took some time for me, and so I spent a lot of time in the Aero Lab, and the cool thing is, if we could talk a little about academics as well too. So I did projects in drag reduction, and we tested these winglets on the tips of wings, and we did flow visualization. I had this professor, his name was Tom Yeckout, and I was talking to some aero majors today. They're like, Tom Yeckout? I'm like,
he's still there.
He teaches controls here. I go, well, he taught me flight controls as well,
wow.
too. But he supervised me. And one time, I think at reunion, maybe the last reunion, he brought me to the cabinet, and he opened up the cabinet, and he showed me the hardware that we used for our project.
From from your class?
Yeah, from my class.
That's amazing.
And here's why I'm telling you that. When in my interview with Secretary Kendall, he sat me down and he was talking about, hey, we're doing in your team, we're doing some drag reduction activities, and he's like, what do you know about blended wing body aircraft? And it turns out, not only had I done some research on that, I had done a project at Staff College, and to me, my message to cadets out there who are working on a project, who are wondering, hey, is this going to amount to anything? Does this matter? I'm here to tell you that it does, because the type of work that goes on at this academy is literally out of this world. We got folks that are working with SpaceX. I went down, and we're actually doing a project called the blended wing aircraft, which is like a big flying manta ray that's gonna reduce fuel consumption by roughly 30%, to reduce fuel for fuel consumption across our Air Force and extend our range.
How are we going to do that?
We're going to build a prototype in 2027. And so one of my sections is operational energy. And on that team, we have a team dedicated to reducing drag on aircraft, finding efficiencies. Why is this important? Well, it's because in great power competition, we know that our adversaries are going to come after our logistics and fuel resources. And as a logistician, you know that. Our adversaries are targeting our installations. They're going to target our fuel resources. So what's the best thing we can do? We can be as efficient as we can with our fuel. And flying C-17s, one thing you get to know real quick, that if you land at an austere location, you're going to drain that fuel bladder almost instantly. And what does that mean? That means less sorties. That's less fire missions if you're flying Apaches out of there. That means less fuel for generators if you lose power. That means less ability to get your caps in the air. And we've got to embody that as a department and be ready for what that challenge holds for us. So getting efficient with our fuel, to me, isn't something that we're going to do because we're nice. We're going to do it because it's going to be an imperative. It's going to be a strategic imperative, and we've got to be ready for that. And so we've been working hard at those things, but I think the blended wing body aircraft is a long-term thing that it's been out there for a long time, but we've got to proof it. And so it's really cool. And I was
almost
just
full circle for you.
It's incredible. And we just we're at this at the plant for Jet Zero. We did a visit there to spend some time with them, look at their production facility. And what do I see when I walk in the conference room? 5 cadets sitting on the end of the table, learning, taking notes, interacting with the top systems engineers. And interestingly enough, one of those cadets had come and visited me and spent the summer, actually 3 of them. She was part of a team of 3 that came and visited my organization and worked on the impacts of strategic temperature changes and how it will affect payloads for tanker aircraft. And so they did this research, presented me this paper, and now here I am seeing them at industry, being on the leading edge. And to me, let me tell you, that filled me with so much optimism and excitement for the future. And most importantly, what we're producing here at the Air Force Academy, a top-notch engineering school that is regarded across the industry. So a little turn to academics there, but big shout out to what we're doing across our academic programs. I just think we're on the right track and we need to keep up the momentum.
No, that's huge. I was actually going to ask you, how are you leveraging some of our cadets and some of the things you're doing? But it sounds like they're already doing it.
Check, done. I mean, they're rocking the house.
That's
and
amazing.
Yeah, just leading the way. Man.
Yes.
It's awesome.
So let's talk about, and I'm really curious. So after you graduated the academy, did you know you always wanted to be a pilot, by the way? Did you know you wanted to fly?
I can't remember a day where I wasn't drawing airplanes. And you're asking me about when I was younger, you know, what kind of kid were you? I was a kid who was drawing airplanes.
Okay.
I was a kid with the airplane books. I was a kid who was checking out every single airplane book in the library and learning about them and trying to understand them and wanting to know more. And so naturally, it was just, I can't think of a day where I didn't want to be an aerospace engineer or be a pilot. And you know, sometimes as the ebb and flow of demand for the Air Force, as you know, there was a time of reduction in pilots for the academy, and I didn't get that opportunity then. It was a bummer, but you know, if you do your full duty, the rest will take care of itself. And so I landed at Los Angeles Air Force Base, where we launched this program. I got to launch rocket programs, and you may have heard of this particular payload. It's called GPS.
I might have heard of that one. Yes.
And it was the first time we were doing it, and we're young lieutenants, and we're at Los Angeles Air Force Base, and I was given the responsibility for 3rd stage engines and ordnance systems and some of the avionics. And my boss said, we don't have time. We're launching rockets every single month. I need you to go out to this corporation called Thiokol, and I want you to buy that rocket. And by the way, he said it in a way that it was like, don't screw this up, right? You know what I mean?
The undertone was there.
Yeah, we always had that moment, the don't screw it up
That's
moment. And so that was one of them. And so the one thing that I remember is that our academy demands a lot, and it demands a lot for a reason, because leaders will be demanding a lot of brand new officers. Now, the jury's out as how well I did, but
it seems like you must have done pretty well.
We had 3 successful missions, and we delivered full operational capabilities for our department. And to me, I look back on that. Believe it or not, I still keep in touch with the captain who welcomed me, who brought me on the team. And in 2018, I got the incredible opportunity to let the last Delta II rocket go, and I brought my wife and my daughter with me, and we brought the whole band back together, and it was cool to have kind of the old space cowboys in the room again, going, well, let's let this rocket go for one last time.
That is really cool.
And the best part of it was after that rocket went, and you felt the rumble of a rocket. There's nothing like it in the world. When you feel the rumble go into your stomach, I leaned over to my daughter and I go, what do you think? She said, I am doing that.
I was just going to ask you, did it bleed over into your daughter?
Oh, yeah. And so now she's a cadet at Georgia Tech. She just finished field training. And of course, like every good academy graduate should do, bucked the system. So she bucked the system with her dad and said, I'm going to do ROTC and go to Georgia Tech. So good luck this weekend against Navy. I'll kind of vote for you, but just want to let you know the academy's a lot easier than Georgia Tech. And I'm like,
That's
so she
funny.
and I jaw back and forth. But watching her grow has been really, really cool. And I got a chance to take her up and fly and get her ready for her career. She wants to be a pilot. And let me tell you, we got nothing on this next generation. They are ready for technology.
Mm-hmm.
They are ready for the leading edge.
Oh, yeah.
And we've just got to enable them. Honestly, we've got to get the hell out of the way and let them in. There was one situation we had a new avionics on the aircraft. I won't bore you with the details, but it allows you to deconflict from traffic. It's a GPS-based instrument, and I was kind of flying with her one time a few years ago, and I said, all right, well, this is what it is. So, that little piece, 2,000 below you, positive means 2,000 above you. It's closing in. She's like, Dad, stop.
She knew.
She knew how to interact with that technology. And honestly, I didn't. I was learning how to interact with that technology. So we've got to really make sure that we're blazing a path for our next generation, but at the same time, make sure that that we're not getting in their way. And I think sometimes we do that as grads. We're like, I was like this when I was there. I was at Mitchell Hall today, and I saw the O-96 up there, and it's memorialized. And I walked by that thing, and I like,
did you scan the QR code to fill one out?
Yeah, I did not do the QR code. I was like, that's too much for me. But when you look at it, I thought, I'm like, that's probably where that thing ought to be right now. It's a great remembrance of why it's important, why standards are important, and then the example of how it paid off in combat conditions and saved a life was pretty important. But I'll be honest with you, we find other ways today with this next generation. I can remember flying one mission, and we lost SATCOMs with a particular field, and we were roughly maybe 6 hours out from Iraq in the combat zone, and we didn't know the status of the field. And one of the things you need to do is make sure the field's not under attack. And so before we did that, and we're like, hey, how do we get our 30-minute out? It just wasn't happening. But you know what we were doing? We had brevity codes, and all along the line, all the C-17s that were lined up miles after miles after miles, going all the way back from Iraq to Azerbaijan at 30,000 feet. We're all John. We're communicating. Hey, on guard, we're talking, hey, I got this, and we're using brevity code. So we're not giving anything away.
Right.
We're using our brevity code, and we're saying all along the line, this is what the status of the field, and we're relaying. We're literally relaying a half world away.
Yeah.
That's a testament to our pilot corps, testament to duty. And so it's really in the spirit of that O-96 there that we've adopted. So when people say, oh, that tradition is going to ruin us, we're going to lose standards, I can tell you that even though we got rid of that thing, that we're still an effective force. And I think we have to understand that a little more. Right. And as we kind of move through a period of change at USAFA, I was talking to our cadets about, hey, what do you think about the changes? And restrictions, but I understand the importance. I'm going to harken back to 1991 or so when the first Gulf War kicked off, and we were cadets when that thing kicked off, and almost instantly we moved into BDUs. We started wearing those every day. We started creating the warfighter mindset. We sealed off to make sure that we had good security. We canceled a lot of passes, and we know what we did. We moved from a 4th class system to a 4-class system.
Here we are.
Sound familiar? Sound familiar? That was after the war kicked off. Think about that. After the war kicked off. Our superintendent is trying to do it before the war kicks off to make sure that we're ready to fight the fight and get into it. So I have a lot of respect for our superintendent in taking this step. I do agree that we've got to get execution right. Sometimes you get some growing pains with those things, but I think we've got to step back in the grad community and digest a little bit and get behind our soup, get behind some of the changes that have been going on. And I was talking to some cadets last night. I go, what do you think of this? And they're like, we understand it. It hurts a little bit. because the expectations, the things that and the environment that we're in has now changed. And honestly, I'll shoot straight from the hip and say that sometimes it feels like the goalpost is being moved on you, because you're like, hey, you meet one standard and then the standard moves again. Yeah, things get tough. But we're a resilient institution. And when you get down to the brass tacks of who we are as grads, the core of what we do and execute our mission will never go away.
Right.
And we've just got to blaze a path for our next generation to be successful.
Absolutely. Well, speaking of blaze a path, and I think some of our listeners want to hear sometimes, they have times when they fail at things. And in leadership, how do you grow from that? Can you share a time when you experienced failure and what it looked like, and to help inspire them through that?
Yep. One of the worst days of my life was when I failed a check ride. I failed a simulator check ride in the C-17, and it hurt. It hurt bad. I had aspirations in my career. I was like, what is this going to mean for me in check ride? But some really smart folks, and that's where you turn to people who you really go to for advice. And it's like, Ravi, there are those who have and those who will. So honestly, I just need a smack in the head. They're like, get over it, man. Whatever. You failed check ride. Go out there, clean that thing up. And those ups and downs in a flying career occur. I'm to be 100% honest with you. My failures are stacked up right next to my successes. And so I think to me, the failures were the things that helped me grow through things. And sometimes you think, okay, well, that failure was unfair. I got a raw deal out of that. And maybe I did, maybe I didn't. But you keep moving forward, keep taking one step after another. Now, I'm not a football guy. I know I love football, I watch it, but I never played football. But I do know what running back coaches say. I think, I'm not sure. They say, above all, always keep your legs moving. Don't ever stop when you're running. Keep your legs moving. And so to me, I've always taken that advice, and I've given that advice to other people too, especially when they come to me with challenges.
That's great advice. Yeah. So maybe we can talk about your role now a little bit. And so can you actually explain what you do? It might actually be shorter to say what you don't do, because when I look at the description, it's quite a bit. We have listeners that are parents and that maybe don't have a lot of military background and really understand. So I think it's wonderful to share with the full community.
Yeah, let me talk about the position. So the job is one of those long titles. It's the Assistant Secretary for Energy, Installations, and the Environment. First thing first, I'm not a military member. I'm a presidential appointee. So my job is as an appointee and Senate confirmed appointee. That means that you go through a hearing like you see on TV and you get voted on, right? You get the vote. I was lucky enough to have, after a period of being held, I had a bipartisan vote. And so that was pretty neat to have that. But my role specifically is to ensure that our installations are ready. Installations are ready for the fight, for the future fight, and for current conditions. Things that I lose sleep over. Right now, we're in a decade of consequence that our Secretary and Chief regularly say. That decade of consequence includes great power competition in which China and Russia seek to shape the world order in ways that work to their advantage in an autocratic manner. And so we've got to be ready for that. And that includes establishing an important deterrence. So my job is to make sure installations are strong and present a approach of deterrence, and when deterrence fail, be ready to win. Right. So what does that mean for us? That means ensuring that our installations have power capabilities, that have strong runways, that have strong hangars, strong facilities, and included in which families live on installations as well. That's too. Right. Ensure we have top-notch housing. So you'll see me reaching across all those areas. Wow. But importantly enough, making sure that those installations have the right power is critical. Our adversaries have declared their intent and have the capacity to go after our critical infrastructure. And that's the one thing that keeps me up at night, making sure that we have critical redundancies and opportunities to, if somebody comes after our infrastructure, tries to cut our power, we have redundant capabilities, that our control systems are cyber hardened. And you mentioned earlier both kinetic and cyber threats. So roughly in the past 2 decades, as China has modernized, our CENTCOM theater has really shaped an environment in which CONUS installations are they're under threat a little bit, but not entirely. We could be relatively confident that Grand Forks would be generally safe from ISIS, right, from a major attack.
Right.
In great power competition, all of that goes out the window. Our adversaries, to include Russia and China, know how to go after critical infrastructure. They know how to employ cyber capabilities, and that's why we've got to make sure that we are pursuing cyber-hardened energy, control systems that protect you from those threats, and the ability to island from the local grid when we need to.
Like isolate, you mean?
Yeah, isolate. So here's one thing we're doing. I'm on a march over the next 5 years to bring 20 or so microgrids across our most critical installations. A microgrid is kind of like a power bar. You plug it into the wall and you can plug in renewable energy. You can plug in wind, geo, all kinds of things into that, solar, to build critical redundancies. So ultimately, building those redundancies allow you to harden your capabilities at the installation. And microreactors give you the ability to manage and distribute power where you need it. Now, we can also put in battery storage. So battery storage allows you to, when the balloon goes up, boom, put in a firewall with the local community and get the jets out of town. Keep your employed in place mission moving and build critical redundancies. Then, once the jets are out of town, plug back in and share that power with a local community, because we know that our adversaries are going to be driving civil disruption to affect the efficiency of our installations as well, too. So that dynamic is really complex.
Wow.
One of the things we're doing—
And the time is compressed.
And the time is compressed. So we won't have time to react as quickly. So we've got to prepare for an all-new environment in our installations. And it goes right back to the Hap Arnold quote. We've got to make sure that they're ready to ensure our operations are effective. And now, I was recently at Eielson Air Force Base, and what we're doing at Eielson is really novel. We're going to put in a small modular microreactor, a small baby nuclear reactor.
I was like, is there a small version
there
of that?
is a small version, but it hadn't been developed yet. And we decided that we're going to push on with this new capability and bring it to Eielson Air Force Base. Wow. The key is to, back in the day, we used to do something, proof it military-wise, and then see if it's viable in the commercial market, right? Not anymore. We're going to do it all concurrently. So we're going to pursue a Nuclear Regulatory Commission license. Wow. We've been engaging the local community. They love it, including tribal nations who know that power advantages are going to be important for sharing in the community. And so that will be the first micronuclear reactor in any installation. We're looking to award in the spring or sooner, and then get this thing up and running in 2027.
Oh my goodness.
Why is this important at Eielson? You're like, whoa, it's way up in Alaska. Eielson is a critical entry point for the Indo-PACOM theater.
I was going to say, where it's located.
It's where one of the highest concentrations of our 5th Gen fighter force is at. It's where we do air defense, and it's where our mobility forces will be moving from Fort Wainwright all the way down range. So that's a critical node, and there's a few more of those that we've got to really, really stay focused on. So we're looking at how we can improve power consumption across our Air Force and be more efficient, and bringing these microgrids online is going to be a crucial aspect of that.
Well, something I've learned about you is that you're not afraid to push the envelope, push the speed, but do it, like you said, concurrently and to find some solutions. And I don't know that there's anyone else that could do it just like you're doing it in this
It's
role.
not me. It's my team. I have an incredible team of folks that refuse to accept anything better than excellence in our department. In fact, we have a saying in our organization that we eat no for breakfast. So I dare you to tell us to no that we can't do something. One of our coolest announcements recently that we were told no to for roughly 3 years was a new apartment complex at Edwards Air Force Base. So some folks may not know this, but Edwards Air Force Base is very isolated and it's located in the desert. And so it takes roughly 45 minutes to get to the base once you get through the gate. And so isolation of our military members, especially our junior enlisted, has been around for roughly 4 decades or more. And when we said, hey, let's do a venture-backed business model that allows us to bring state-of-the-art apartments, not in Milcom timeline, like right now timeline. And so we just announced a all-new venture commercial apartment complex that we just broke ground on, and we're going to start building, hopefully done by 2026. And these are timelines that allow us to move the Air Force forward aggressively. Another thing that we're doing is I just announced a $1.1 billion investment in our dormitories and CDCs. As you know, quality of life is so critical. Back to this. If we're going to say that we're have the number one installations in the world, we've got to live up to it. And that means our families need that too, as well. So you've heard a lot about the GAO reports, everything from mold to decrepit housing. We're going to fix that. We're going to get ahead of it, and we're going to stay ahead of it. And so that's why our secretary in our most recent president's budget announced this. All we need is a budget now. And so our secretary is pressing hard for that. And we know that once that budget is approved, we can get working on these things and start changing quality of life and start upping our game at our installations.
Well, I'm going to take one of those leadership nuggets as just eat no for breakfast. But we're going to learn more about your final takeaway lessons. Before we do that with you, Dr. Chaudhary, we want to thank you for listening to Long Blue Leadership. The podcast publishes Tuesdays in both video and audio and is available on all your favorite podcast platforms. Watch or listen to all episodes of Long Blue Leadership at longblueleadership.org. Dr. Chaudhary, this has been incredible. If you might leave our listeners with one thing, what would you like to share with them when it comes to leadership, or maybe just some lessons or anything about you that you'd like to share?
Love what you do. Love our nation. I love my country because it's given me and my family everything. And I want everybody to believe that. You know, sometimes we get in these periods where we feel divided, right, across the spectrum, and it doesn't matter what your affiliation is. Sometimes you just feel that, but I want folks to remember that America is not about what goes on entirely in Washington. It's about neighbors. It's about what you do for your neighbors. And to me, that's our biggest strength as a nation. Many years ago, our forefathers felt that the values of equality, fair treatment, and self-determination would be enough to topple an empire. And it is. We should believe that too. And I want everybody to know that. So it's an honor to be here. But before I go, I want to say thank you for just an intriguing hour. It's an honor to be here. And I want to give you my personal
Oh, my goodness.
And say thank you so much. It embodies a lot of what we do. Military family housing, airfields, of course, our beautiful 5th-gen fighter aircraft, and our wind power and capabilities is a symbol of what we've got to do for our installation school.
That is an honor, sir.
Awesome.
Thank you so much. Oh my goodness. Thank you.
It was a great hour, and keep doing what you do. Keep making sure that our grads out there have a voice, have a say, and can contribute to all this institution has to offer our nation. And so you're doing it, and I can't thank you enough for it.
Thank you very much. Thank you for joining us for this edition of Long Blue Leadership. The podcast drops every 2 weeks on Tuesdays and is available on all your favorite podcast apps. Send your thoughts, comments, and guest ideas to us at socialmedia@usafa.org and listen to past episodes at longblueleadership.org.